Most people think control begins when someone tells you what to do. They imagine manipulation as something obvious, someone giving orders, making demands, or forcing you into certain behaviors. But real control is usually much quieter than that. It begins with a simple human need, the need to be liked, the need to be accepted, the need to feel important in the eyes of others. From childhood, we are taught to seek approval. We smile when we receive praise. We feel hurt when we are criticized. We learn very early that acceptance feels safe and rejection feels painful. There is nothing wrong with wanting connection. The problem begins when your sense of value depends entirely on what other people think of you, because the moment your self-worth depends on another person's approval, you give them power over your emotions. And the person who controls your emotions eventually controls your decisions. Think about how many people live their lives trying to avoid disappointing others. They stay in relationships that make them unhappy because they fear rejection. They say yes when they desperately want to say no. They hide their opinions because they are afraid of criticism. Little by little, they stop making choices based on their own values and begin making choices based on what will earn acceptance. This is how control quietly enters your life. No chains, no threats, just a fear of losing approval. Manipulative people understand this instinctively. They notice who desperately wants to be liked. They notice who cannot handle rejection. They notice who needs constant reassurance. And once they discover this weakness, influence becomes easy. A compliment suddenly becomes a reward. A little distance becomes a punishment. A little criticism creates anxiety. Without realizing it, you begin adjusting your behavior just to regain their approval. You work harder, you try harder, you become someone else. And slowly, your life begins revolving around another person's reactions. This is dangerous because approval can become addictive. The praise of others feels good. Being accepted feels comforting, but when your emotional stability depends on it, you become vulnerable. You become easy to control because anyone who can give you validation can also take it away. And the fear of losing that validation often makes people betray themselves. They ignore their boundaries, they tolerate disrespect, they suppress their true personality, they sacrifice their peace, all because they cannot bear the thought of being disliked. The truth is that some of the most controlled people in the world do not even realize they are being controlled. They believe they are simply being nice. They believe they are being agreeable, but deep inside, many of their decisions are motivated by fear, the fear of losing approval. There is a massive difference between kindness and dependence. A kind person helps because they choose to. A dependent person helps because they are afraid of rejection. A kind person can disagree respectfully. A dependent person constantly seeks permission to be themselves. This is why the need for approval is the first doorway through which manipulation enters, because when you need everyone to like you, you stop belonging to yourself. You begin belonging to public opinion. And public opinion changes constantly. Some people will praise you, some will criticize you, some will misunderstand you no matter what you do. If your happiness depends on universal approval, you will spend your entire life chasing something impossible. Freedom begins when you accept a difficult truth. Not everyone will like you. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will approve of your choices. And that is perfectly fine, because your worth does not rise and fall according to someone else's opinion. The moment you stop needing constant validation, something powerful happens. You become calmer, more confident, more authentic, and most importantly, much harder to control, because people can only manipulate you through approval if you desperately need it. And once you begin breaking your dependence on validation, you start seeing something even deeper. The people who seek to control you often study your fears and quietly use those fears against you without you even realizing it. Once someone realizes that you need approval, the next thing they begin studying is your fears, because every human being has emotional weaknesses. Some people fear rejection, some fear loneliness, some fear abandonment, some fear failure, some fear disappointing others. These fears often remain hidden, even from ourselves. We rarely talk about them. We try to ignore them, but they quietly influence our decisions every day. And the people who seek to control others understand something very important. If they can discover your deepest fears, they can influence your behavior without ever forcing you to do anything. Think about it. A person who fears rejection will often tolerate disrespect just to avoid being left behind. A person who fears loneliness may stay in unhealthy relationships because being alone feels unbearable. A person who fears failure may never speak their mind because they are afraid of making mistakes. The fear itself becomes a leash. No one needs to hold it. You hold it for them. This is why manipulation is often so subtle. Manipulators rarely create your fears. They simply discover the fears that already exist and use them to their advantage. At first, it happens quietly. They notice what makes you anxious. They notice what hurts you. They notice the things that make you emotional. And once they understand your emotional triggers, influence becomes easy. Imagine someone knows that you fear abandonment. All they have to do is become distant. Suddenly, you become anxious. You start chasing. You start trying harder. You become willing to do almost anything to restore the connection. Now they have power, not because they forced you, but because they understood your fear. This happens in relationships all the time. It happens in friendships, in families, even in workplaces. People are often controlled through emotions they do not fully understand. That is why self-awareness is so important, because what you do not understand about yourself can be used against you. The greatest weakness is not having fears. Everyone has fears. The greatest weakness is being unaware of them. If you do not know what triggers you emotionally, you become easy to manipulate. A little criticism destroys your confidence. A little distance creates panic. A little rejection changes your entire mood. You begin reacting instead of thinking. And emotional reactions are exactly what manipulators depend on. They want you emotional because emotional people are easier to influence. Fear clouds judgment. Fear creates desperation. Fear makes people abandon their values. This is why understanding yourself is the beginning of freedom. Ask yourself difficult questions. What am I afraid of? Why do certain people's opinions affect me so deeply? Why does rejection hurt me so much? Why do I struggle to let go of certain relationships? The answers to these questions reveal your emotional vulnerabilities. And once you understand your fears, they begin losing power over you because awareness creates choice. When you know that your fear of loneliness is making you stay in unhealthy situations, you can change your behavior. When you know that your fear of rejection is making you seek approval, you can begin building self-respect. When you understand your emotional triggers, you stop being controlled by them. You become more intentional, more calm, more aware. This does not mean your fears disappear overnight. It means they stop controlling your life. You begin observing them instead of obeying them. And this changes everything, because people can only use your fears against you when those fears remain hidden in the shadows. The moment you bring them into the light, you become stronger. You become harder to manipulate, harder to pressure, harder to control. Because self-awareness is one of the greatest forms of protection, the more you understand yourself, the less power other people have over your emotions. And once you begin understanding your fears, you start noticing another dangerous thing that control does to people. Little by little, it makes them forget who they truly are and begin living according to someone else's expectations. Once someone understands your fears, something even more dangerous can begin to happen. Little by little, you start losing yourself. This is one of the most powerful forms of control because it happens so slowly that most people never notice it. At first, the changes seem small. You stop expressing certain opinions because you do not want conflict. You change your behavior to gain acceptance. You begin hiding parts of your personality because you are afraid of rejection. You tell yourself that these are minor sacrifices, but over time, those small sacrifices begin to add up. And one day, you wake up and realize that you no longer know who you are. You have become someone who exists according to other people's expectations. This is how many people lose their identity, not through force, not through a single dramatic event, but through countless moments of abandoning themselves. The need for approval and the fear of rejection slowly convince you that being yourself is too risky. So you adapt, you become who others want you to be, you become who you think they will accept, you become who you think they need. And while you are busy becoming everyone else's version of you, you slowly stop becoming yourself. This is why manipulators often encourage dependence, because a person who knows who they are is difficult to control. A person with strong values can say no. A person with a clear identity can walk away. A person who respects themselves cannot easily be pressured. But a person who has forgotten who they are becomes vulnerable because they begin needing other people to tell them who they should be. This happens in relationships all the time. Someone enters your life and gradually becomes the center of your decisions. You stop pursuing your goals. You stop spending time with people who matter to you. You stop doing the things that once made you happy. Everything begins revolving around keeping one person satisfied. And the more your world shrinks, the more dependent you become. Eventually, your identity becomes tied to their approval. This is dangerous because when you lose your identity, you also lose your inner compass. You no longer ask yourself, what do I truly want? Instead, you ask, what will make them happy? What will keep them from leaving? What will make them accept me? Your entire life becomes a reaction to someone else's desires, and this is a hidden form of imprisonment. The truth is that your identity is one of your greatest sources of strength. Your values, your dreams, your principles, your passions, these things create stability. They give you direction. They help you make decisions that align with who you truly are. When you lose these things, you become emotionally lost. And emotionally lost people are easy to control because they are searching for someone else to give them meaning. This is why protecting your identity is so important. Never abandon your values just to fit into someone else's world. Never give up your passions just to keep someone's attention. Never become smaller so that someone else feels more comfortable. Healthy relationships allow you to remain yourself. Healthy connections support your growth. They do not demand that you sacrifice your identity in exchange for love or acceptance, because real love never asks you to stop being who you are. Real friendship never requires you to betray yourself. Real connection allows authenticity. The moment you start feeling as though you must constantly pretend, hide, or change yourself to maintain a relationship, something unhealthy is happening. You are slowly giving away your identity. And when you give away your identity, you give away your power. This is why self-respect is so important, because self-respect reminds you that your opinions matter, your needs matter, your dreams matter, your identity matters. You were not meant to become a reflection of someone else's expectations. You were meant to become fully yourself. And once you reclaim your identity, you begin noticing another uncomfortable truth. The people who control others often do it by controlling their emotions, because the person who controls your reactions eventually controls your behavior. After a person begins losing their identity, the next stage of control becomes even more powerful. It moves from influencing your thoughts to controlling your emotions. And this is where many people unknowingly give away their power, because the person who can control your emotional reactions can often control your behavior. Think about how much of your life is shaped by emotion. A single insult can ruin your entire day. A little criticism can make you doubt yourself. A cold message can create anxiety. A moment of rejection can change your decisions. Emotions are powerful, and because they are powerful, they can also become doors through which manipulation enters. Manipulative people understand this. They know that if they can make you angry, they can make you act impulsively. If they can make you insecure, they can make you seek their approval. If they can make you afraid, they can influence your choices. They do not need to force you. They simply need to trigger your emotions. This is why emotional discipline is one of the greatest forms of personal power, because if every little thing controls your emotions, then every little thing controls you. Many people live like emotional puppets. Someone praises them and they feel valuable. Someone criticizes them and they feel worthless. Someone ignores them and they become anxious. Someone disappoints them and they lose their peace. Their emotional state changes according to the actions of other people. Without realizing it, they have handed over control of their inner world. This is exhausting because it means your peace depends entirely on external circumstances, and external circumstances are always changing. One of the greatest lessons in life is understanding that you cannot control what other people say, think, or do, but you can learn to control your response. There is enormous power in this because emotional maturity begins when you stop allowing every event to dictate your state of mind. A calm person is difficult to manipulate. A person who thinks before reacting is difficult to control. A person who remains centered during emotional situations becomes incredibly powerful. This does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means learning not to become a prisoner of your emotions. Feel your emotions, acknowledge them, but do not let them command your actions. Many people regret the decisions they made while angry. Many destroy relationships because of impulsive reactions. Many give away their power because they react before they think. Manipulators often depend on this. They want emotional reactions. They want you angry. They want you insecure. They want you desperate, because emotional people are easier to influence, but calm people are dangerous to manipulators because calm people observe, they think, they ask questions, they do not immediately react. And that pause changes everything. Imagine someone insults you. Your first instinct may be to defend yourself, to argue, to prove yourself. But what if you paused? What if you asked yourself why their opinion holds so much power over your emotions? What if you refused to let one person's words decide your peace? Suddenly, you are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing. And choice is power. The more emotionally disciplined you become, the more freedom you experience. You stop needing to win every argument. You stop taking everything personally. You stop allowing other people's moods to become your moods. You become more stable, more grounded, more difficult to manipulate, because emotional self-control creates independence. The truth is that some people will always try to provoke you. Some will criticize you. Some will attempt to make you doubt yourself. But their power ends where your self-control begins. No one can truly control you if they cannot control your emotional reactions. This is why inner peace is such a powerful form of strength, because a peaceful mind cannot easily be manipulated. A centered person cannot easily be pressured, and an emotionally disciplined person becomes incredibly difficult to control. But there is another stage of manipulation that often follows emotional control. Once people gain influence over your emotions, they often try to convince you that you cannot live happily without them, creating one of the strongest forms of dependence imaginable. After someone gains influence over your emotions, the next step of control often becomes much deeper. They begin creating a belief inside your mind that you cannot be happy, successful, or complete without them. This is one of the strongest forms of control because it attacks something fundamental, your sense of independence. Human beings naturally desire connection. We all want love, friendship, and belonging. But when connection turns into dependence, something dangerous happens. You stop seeing the other person as an important part of your life. You begin seeing them as your entire life. And the moment your happiness depends entirely on another person, you become vulnerable because now your peace can be taken away. Your confidence can be shaken. Your decisions can be influenced. Not through force, but through fear. The fear of losing them. This is why emotional dependence is such a powerful tool of control. Some people slowly create this dependence without you even realizing it. At first, they become your source of comfort. Then they become your source of confidence. Then your source of happiness. Little by little, you stop trusting yourself and begin depending on them for emotional stability. Eventually, a frightening thought enters your mind. I can't live without this person. The moment you believe that, your freedom begins disappearing because now you will tolerate things you once promised yourself you would never accept. You will ignore disrespect. You will abandon your boundaries. You will sacrifice your peace. You will stay in situations that are hurting you because losing the person feels more painful than losing yourself. This is how emotional control becomes emotional imprisonment. And many people never realize it is happening. They call it love, but dependence and love are not the same thing. Love allows freedom. Dependence creates fear. Love supports growth. Dependence creates attachment to comfort. Love says, I appreciate your presence. Dependence says, I cannot survive without you. There is a massive difference. The truth is that no human being should carry the responsibility of becoming your entire world. No person can provide all your happiness. No person can heal every insecurity. No person can give your life permanent meaning. That responsibility belongs to you. The strongest relationships are formed between two people who already have a sense of self. Two people who enjoy each other deeply, but do not lose themselves in the process. Because healthy love adds to your life. It does not replace it. Manipulative relationships often work differently. They slowly isolate you from yourself. You stop spending time with friends. You stop pursuing your goals. You stop doing the things that once gave you joy. Your entire emotional world begins revolving around one person. And the smaller your world becomes, the more powerful they become, because now they hold the key to your emotional state. This is why emotional independence is so important. Emotional independence does not mean you stop loving people. It means your identity, peace, and happiness are not entirely dependent on someone else's presence. You can love deeply and still remain whole. You can care deeply and still maintain your individuality. You can value someone and still know that your life has meaning beyond them. This creates strength. Because a person who can stand on their own emotionally cannot easily be controlled. They are capable of walking away from unhealthy situations. They are capable of protecting their boundaries. They are capable of making decisions based on self-respect rather than fear. And self-respect is incredibly powerful because the person who knows they can survive loss becomes impossible to manipulate through fear of abandonment. The truth is that you are far stronger than you think. You existed before certain people entered your life. You had dreams, passions, and purpose before them. And you will continue to have value regardless of who stays or leaves. The moment you truly understand this, something remarkable happens. Fear begins losing its grip on you, dependence begins fading, and your inner strength begins returning. Because freedom starts when you realize that no person should ever hold the power to define your worth or control your peace. And once you break the illusion that you need others to complete you, you become ready for the final and most important lesson of all, reclaiming your inner power and becoming emotionally free from anyone who seeks to control you. After understanding how approval, fear, emotional reactions, and dependence can be used to control you, there is only one question left. How do you become free? The answer is both simple and difficult. You stop giving away your inner power. Most people imagine power as something external, money, status, influence, authority. But the greatest form of power is much quieter than that. It is the ability to remain in control of yourself. Because if someone can control your emotions, your choices, or your sense of worth, then it does not matter how much success you have on the outside. You are still living under someone else's influence. Real freedom begins within. It begins the moment you decide that your peace will no longer depend on other people's opinions. It begins when you stop needing everyone to understand you, when you stop chasing approval, when you stop allowing fear to make your decisions. This is what self-mastery looks like. And self-mastery is one of the rarest forms of strength in the world. Most people spend their lives trying to control other people. Very few people learn to control themselves, but once you begin mastering yourself, something incredible happens. You become emotionally free. Criticism no longer destroys your confidence. Rejection no longer defines your worth. Distance no longer creates panic. You begin responding to life instead of reacting to it. This is power, because a person who cannot be easily shaken cannot be easily controlled. Think about the people who possess true strength. They are not necessarily the loudest. They are not always the most successful. They are the people who know who they are. They trust themselves. They respect themselves. They do not abandon their values just because someone else disapproves. They do not betray themselves for temporary acceptance. They have an inner stability that cannot easily be taken away. This is the kind of power that changes your entire life. Because when your confidence comes from within, manipulation loses its effectiveness. People can no longer control you through praise. They can no longer control you through guilt. They can no longer control you through fear. You become emotionally independent. This does not mean you stop loving people. It does not mean you become cold or distant. It simply means that your identity no longer depends on anyone else's approval. You begin taking responsibility for your own happiness. You begin trusting your own judgment. You stop asking everyone for permission to be yourself. And for the first time in a long time, you begin feeling free. Another important part of reclaiming your power is learning to create boundaries. Many people fear boundaries because they think boundaries push people away. The truth is the opposite. Boundaries protect your peace. They protect your identity. They remind you that your needs matter too. A person without boundaries slowly becomes available for everyone else's demands. A person with healthy boundaries understands that saying no is sometimes an act of self-respect. You do not need to explain every decision. You do not need to earn the right to protect your peace. You do not need permission to value yourself because your life belongs to you. Your emotions belong to you. Your choices belong to you. And the more responsibility you take for your inner world, the more powerful you become. The truth is that there will always be people who try to influence you, people who want your approval, your attention, your energy, your obedience, but their power only exists if you give it to them. The moment you stop handing over your worth, your identity, and your peace to other people, something changes inside you. You become calm-centered, unshakable. You become the kind of person who can love deeply without losing themselves, connect with others without depending on them, and walk away from anything that demands the sacrifice of their self-respect. Because true freedom is not controlling other people, true freedom is reaching a point where no one else has the power to control you from within. And the greatest victory in life is not mastering others. It is mastering yourself and becoming impossible to manipulate, because your peace, your identity, and your worth now belong entirely to you.